The Valen orbital habitat floated silently above a pale blue planet, its metal rings glinting under the distant light of two suns. Thousands of travelers moved through its long halls each day. Scientists, traders, soldiers, and diplomats from dozens of different worlds. For most people, the station was a hub of trade and culture. For Ethan Hale, it was something far more personal. It was the start of an adventure he had never expected. Ethan had joined the Human Tayari Cultural Exchange Program, an effort to improve relations between humans and the Tayari, one of the galaxy's most mysterious species. The program was simple. Humans and Tayari would share living quarters for a year, learning each other's habits and ways of thinking. On paper, it sounded easy. In reality, Ethan was nervous. He had never lived with an alien before. The day he arrived, his boots clanged against the polished floor of the habitat's docking bay. He looked around with wide eyes. The walls curved upward in smooth arcs, lined with glowing strips that mimicked sunlight. Around him, aliens of every shape and size moved gracefully, but his attention was caught by the tall, elegant figures of the Tayari. The Tayari looked almost human, but not quite. Their skin shimmered faintly, reflecting colors depending on the light. Their hair seemed too fine, almost like threads of silk, and their eyes, silver and deep like calm lakes, seemed to see straight through a person. They walked with quiet dignity, as if they were always aware of their surroundings in ways humans could not match. Ethan touched the strap of his travel bag nervously. He reminded himself that he had been chosen for this program because of his patience and adaptability. But still, his heart beat faster when the station guide, a short human woman in uniform, handed him his room assignment. Section C, Habitat Ring 4, she said. You'll be sharing with Liara, a Tayari student. She's been informed. Ethan nodded, thanked her, and made his way through the winding corridors. The habitat was massive, like a small city, with gardens, libraries, and training halls. He tried not to get lost, following glowing symbols on the walls until he finally reached his assigned door. He pressed his hand against the sensor, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the room was larger than he expected. 2 beds were placed against opposite walls, separated by a curved desk. There were storage units, a small cooking alcove, and even a window showing the stars outside, and then he saw her. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, her eyes closed in meditation. Her long hair shimmered faintly under the room's soft lights. For a moment, Ethan hesitated, not sure if he should disturb her. But then her eyes opened, silver and sharp, and focused directly on him. You are human, she said softly. Her voice was calm, musical, but also carried an echo, as if it brushed against his thoughts. Ethan cleared his throat. Yes, Ethan Hale. I guess I'm your new roommate. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. I am Liara. Welcome. There was silence for a moment. Ethan set his bag down carefully, feeling awkward. He had imagined many things about living with an alien, but he hadn't imagined someone so striking. Liara was unlike anyone he had ever met, graceful, poised, and strangely intense. Trying to break the silence, he gestured to the window. Nice view, isn't it? Liara glanced at the stars. It is constant. Stars do not change quickly. I find them grounding. Ethan smiled awkwardly. I guess we already see things differently. Humans usually think of stars as exciting, places to explore. Her silver eyes softened, and for a brief moment, he thought he saw curiosity flicker in them. Perhaps that is why your species travels so far. You chase what does not change. Ethan chuckled. Maybe. The first few days were strange. Ethan quickly learned that Liara's habits were very different from his. She woke early and spent long hours in meditation, sometimes humming softly, in a language he didn't understand. She ate carefully prepared meals of glowing fruit and liquid soups, while he stuck to his simple human rations. She liked silence, while he often filled the room with music from his datapad. At first, Ethan worried that his habits annoyed her. But Liara never complained. She simply observed, calm and quiet, as though she was studying a puzzle. One evening, after a long day of orientation classes, Ethan returned to the room to find Liara sitting by the window again. She was staring out into space, her expression unreadable. "Long day?" he asked, dropping his bag on his bed. She turned her gaze toward him. "I am preparing." "Preparing for what?" Her voice lowered, almost hesitant. "The cycle. Our people are entering mating season." Ethan froze. He wasn't sure what to say. He had read about Tayari culture in the program's manual, but most of the details had been vague. The manual only said that Tayari went through natural cycles where their emotions intensified. "Oh," he said carefully. "Does that affect you a lot?" Liara's eyes flickered with something he couldn't identify. "It affects all of us. It heightens emotions, thoughts, sometimes connections." Ethan swallowed, suddenly aware of how small the room felt. "And you're okay with me staying here?" Liara studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "It will be different. But perhaps that is the point of this program." Ethan gave a small, nervous laugh. "Guess we'll both learn something." That night, he lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. His thoughts spun. What exactly did heightened emotions mean? Would she become angry or sad or something else entirely? And what did she mean by connections? He shook his head. It wasn't his place to question. He was here to learn, and to be respectful. Still, a part of him couldn't shake the feeling that the coming weeks were going to test him in ways he had never expected. The days passed quickly. Ethan tried to make the room feel a little more like home. He pinned up pictures of Earth, mountains, oceans, and forests. Liara studied them quietly, asking questions about the places. In return, she showed him small crystals she kept in a box, each one humming faintly with energy. "They are memory stones," she explained. "We use them to focus during meditation. Each stone carries the essence of a place." Ethan held one carefully. It was warm in his palm, humming like a heartbeat. "This is amazing," he whispered. Liara watched him closely, and he realized she was studying his reaction as much as he was studying the stone. In the common areas of the station, Ethan noticed other humans giving him curious looks. Some whispered that he was unlucky to be paired with a Tayari during their season. Others envied him, calling him brave. Ethan ignored them. He had come here to understand, not to gossip. One evening, as he was preparing food, Liara spoke suddenly. "Why do humans share meals with each other? You could eat alone." Ethan smiled, stirring the pan. "Because food isn't just about eating, it's about being together. It makes people feel closer." She tilted her head. "Closer through something so simple?" "Yeah. Sometimes the simple things matter most." For the first time, Liara smiled faintly. It was small, almost hidden, but it made the room feel warmer. That night, Ethan realized something important. He was no longer nervous about living with Liara. He was curious about her people, and about what this season would bring. He didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but he felt ready, because deep down, he sensed that this unexpected roommate, with her silver eyes and calm voice, would change his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Life on the Valen orbital habitat quickly settled into a rhythm for Ethan Hale, though it was unlike anything he had ever known back on Earth. The station never slept. Its corridors hummed with quiet energy at every hour, filled with people from different species walking side by side. Ethan often caught himself staring at the massive viewports, watching the stars slide past. It was easy to forget he was thousands of light years from home. But what occupied his thoughts most was not the station, nor the endless stars, but his roommate, Liara. At first, living with her had been awkward. She was quiet, disciplined, and sometimes unreadable. But as days turned into weeks, Ethan began to notice small changes. Liara's usual calm seemed less steady. Her silvery eyes lingered on things longer than before. Her movements were sharper, and sometimes she seemed lost, in thought, as if listening to something only she could hear. One evening, Ethan returned from class with a datapad full of notes. He stepped inside their shared room, expecting silence, but instead found Liara pacing slowly back and forth. Her hands moved in strange flowing gestures, and her lips moved without sound. "Hey," Ethan said softly, placing his bag on the desk. "You okay?" Liara stopped abruptly. Her eyes met his, and for a moment he thought he felt a faint pressure, at the edge of his mind like a soft echo. Then it faded. "I am unsettled," she admitted. Her voice was steady, but her posture betrayed tension. The cycle begins to press harder. Ethan remembered her words from earlier. The mating season. The Tayari didn't describe it in physical terms, but rather in emotions and connections. He stepped closer, keeping his voice gentle. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Liara's silver eyes studied him. For a heartbeat, he thought she might refuse. But then she said, "Perhaps. Humans distract themselves with sound, do they not? Music?" Ethan smiled. "Yeah. Music helps us when we're stressed." He tapped his datapad, and soft earth melodies filled the room. A gentle guitar tune drifted into the air, slow and calming. Liara tilted her head, listening. At first her expression was neutral, but then her shoulders loosened slightly. "This is strange," she said. "Your species shapes emotions into sound, then shares them. It is efficient." Ethan laughed lightly. "Efficient? That's one way to describe music. Most of us just say it makes us feel less alone." Liara fell silent, listening. For several minutes, the only sound was the quiet song. Ethan sat on his bed, watching her. He realized he was witnessing something rare, an alien experiencing human culture in its purest form. When the song ended, Liara closed her eyes. "It steadies me." "Thank you." That night, Ethan noticed another change. As he prepared for sleep, he thought he heard a faint whisper, though no one had spoken. The words were unclear, like an echo in a dream. He glanced at Liara, who was lying. On her bed, her eyes closed. He wondered if it had been her thoughts brushing against his mind. The following days grew stranger. Liara became more restless. During meals, her hands trembled slightly as she held her bowl. In class, she seemed distracted, staring into space until instructors called her name. Ethan began to worry. One morning, as he cooked a simple breakfast of eggs from the station's hydroponic farms, Liara approached slowly. "You prepare food each day," she said. "Why?" Ethan shrugged. "It relaxes me, reminds me of home." Liara watched as he stirred the pan. Her eyes softened, though. Her voice held a trace of strain. "You use heat to change it. You take something raw and make it into something else. Humans seem to change many things." Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, I guess we do. We're always changing things, sometimes too fast for our own good." She reached out, not touching the pan but hovering her hand over it. "The warmth feels alive." Ethan hesitated. "Do you want to try some?" Liara nodded. He handed her a small plate. She took a careful bite, then paused. Her silver eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected the taste. "This is simple," she said slowly, "but it carries memory. I can feel your attachment to it." Ethan blinked. "You can feel that?" Her gaze lingered on him. "Your emotions leak through your thoughts. Strong emotions are louder during this season." Ethan set down his fork, suddenly self-conscious. "Does that bother you?" Liara shook her head. "No, it comforts me. It is steady. Your thoughts do not scatter like mine." For the first time, Ethan realized that Liara was relying on him more than he had expected. Her people might be graceful and powerful, but even they had moments of weakness, and somehow he had become her anchor. Later that week, an announcement echoed through the habitat's halls. "Attention, Tayari citizens. The peak of the mating season is approaching. All cultural partners are reminded to respect boundaries and seek guidance if needed." Ethan felt dozens of eyes turned toward him in the common hall. Everyone knew he was paired with a Tayari. Some gave him sympathetic looks. Others looked envious. Ethan ignored them and hurried back to his room. When he arrived, Liara was sitting at the desk, her hands pressed against her temples. The air around her felt heavy, charged, as though emotions themselves had weight. "Liara?" Ethan asked carefully. She opened her eyes. Silver light shimmered faintly within them. "The voices are louder. My thoughts spill over." Ethan hesitated. I think I've heard some of them. Little whispers. Liara lowered her gaze. I am sorry. You should not have to bear this. But Ethan shook his head. Don't apologize. Maybe this is part of the program. Maybe I'm supposed to learn how your people really live. Liara looked at him with quiet surprise. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, You are steady. That evening, Ethan tried something new. He played not just calm music but lively songs from Earth, drums, voices, rhythms that pulsed like a heartbeat. At first, Liara stiffened as if the sound was too much, but then she relaxed into it, closing her eyes. This is different, she murmured. It does not calm me. It carries me. Ethan grinned. Exactly. That's what humans love about music. Sometimes you don't want peace, you want energy. Liara opened her eyes, and for the first time since the cycle had begun, Ethan saw a spark of joy. Perhaps I can endure this. One night, Ethan was drifting towards sleep when the whispers came again. This time they were clearer. He heard fragments of thoughts, memories of a glowing forest, the sound of Tayari laughter, a feeling of belonging. He sat up, startled. Across the room, Liara stirred. You hear me, she whispered. Ethan nodded slowly. Yes, I think I do. Liara's expression was troubled. It is not safe. Our thoughts are private. But the season makes them bleed out. If you hear too much, it may overwhelm you. Ethan took a deep breath. Then we'll figure it out together. I won't leave you alone with this. Her silver eyes softened. Humans are strange. You stay when others would flee. Maybe that's our strength, Ethan said quietly. The next morning, Liara surprised him. She handed him one of her memory stones, its surface glowing faintly. Hold this, she said. It may steady the link between us. Ethan curled his fingers around the stone. A warm pulse spread through his hand, and suddenly images flashed in his mind. Trees with silver leaves, rivers of light, and a city made of crystal. He gasped. This is your home, he whispered. Liara nodded. A fragment of it. Now it belongs to you too. Ethan stared at her. For the first time, he understood the depth of trust she was giving him, and though he didn't know what the peak of this season would bring, he knew he could not abandon her. Because somewhere between music, food, and whispered thoughts, something had begun to form. A bond that neither human nor Tayari had expected, and, as the season drew closer to its peak, Ethan realized one thing clearly. This was no longer just about cultural exchange. It was about survival, trust, and the beginning of an unexpected connection. The days on the Valen orbital habitat blurred together, but for Ethan Hale, each hour felt heavier than the last. The station still buzzed with life, traders selling exotic goods, diplomats moving between meetings, students hurrying to classes. But inside the small room he shared with Liara, time felt slower, charged with an invisible weight. Liara's cycle was reaching its peak. At first, Ethan thought it might simply make her restless, maybe a little distracted. But he had underestimated what the Tayari mating season truly meant. It wasn't physical, it was deeper, emotional, almost spiritual. Her feelings no longer stayed inside her. They spilled into the air around her, invisible but powerful. Ethan could sense them like waves pressing against him. Sometimes when he entered the room, he felt her sadness before he saw her face. Other times, joy would hit him so strongly that his heart raced without reason. Her emotions bled into his mind, and the connection between them grew stronger each day. One evening, Ethan returned to their quarters and found Liara standing near the window, her hands pressed against the glass as if she wanted to step out into the stars themselves. Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, and her hair shimmered like threads of starlight. Liara? He asked cautiously. She turned, and Ethan felt a sudden rush, an echo of her feelings crashing into him. It wasn't anger. It was loneliness, sharp and deep. His chest tightened as though it were his own emotion. I cannot hold it back anymore, Liara whispered. The cycle pulls harder than before. My mind spills into yours, and soon you may lose yourself in it. Ethan steadied himself, forcing a calm breath. Then let it spill. I'm not going anywhere. Liara shook her head. You do not understand. Tayari avoid each other during this time because the connection is too strong. Our thought entangle. We fear losing who we are. Ethan stepped closer. And if you're alone, what happens? Her gaze lowered. Some break under the weight of it. The emotions consume them. For a long moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the distant hum of the station's systems. Ethan's decision formed without hesitation. Then I'll stay with you, he said firmly. We'll face it together. Liara's silver eyes lifted to meet his, and for the first time, her calm mask broke. There was fear there, but also something else. Hope. The following days were difficult. Liara no longer joined classes or walked the station halls. She stayed in their quarters, her aura pressing against Ethan like a storm. He could feel her emotions even without looking at her. Sometimes she sat on her bed and trembled, whispering words in her own language. Other times, she paced, her hands glowing faintly as if her energy had no place to go. Ethan stayed close, speaking softly, playing music, or simply sitting beside her. One night, as he hummed along to an old Earth song, Liara's voice broke through his thoughts. Why do you do this? She asked quietly. Do what? Stay. Any other human would have left when the whispers began. Even some of my own people would have left. Ethan smiled faintly. Because I made a promise, to myself and to this program. I said I'd learn. And I can't learn if I walk away when things get hard. Liara tilted her head. Humans are strange. You hold on to promises as if they are chains, yet you choose the chains willingly. Maybe, Ethan said with a shrug. But sometimes chains are what keep us together. Liara fell silent, but he noticed her aura calming slightly, the storm easing for the first time in hours. As the cycle deepened, their connection grew sharper. At first, Ethan only heard faint whispers of Liara's thoughts, but now, whole images filled his mind without warning. He saw flashes of her childhood, running through glowing forests, her laughter echoing among trees with silver leaves. He saw her family gathered in crystal halls, their voices blending in song. He felt her pride in her people, their history stretching back thousands of years, and sometimes he felt her loneliness, the quiet ache of being far from home, surrounded by strangers who didn't understand her. In return, Liara began to catch glimpses of Ethan's memories. He realized it one evening when she suddenly whispered, "The ocean." Ethan looked at her in surprise. What about it? You stood on a cliff once with water stretching to the horizon. You felt small but free. I saw it. Ethan blinked. He hadn't thought about that day in years. That was Earth. I was 17. My family took a trip to the coast. Liara's lips curved faintly. It was beautiful. Ethan chuckled softly. Yeah, it was. The realization struck him hard. Their bond wasn't just one way anymore. They were sharing each other's lives piece by piece. It was dangerous, maybe even risky for his mind. But it was also something rare, a bridge between two species. One night, the cycle reached its breaking point. Ethan woke suddenly, his chest tight. The air around him felt heavy, buzzing with emotion. He turned and saw Liara curled on her bed, her body trembling. Liara, he called, rushing to her side. Her eyes snapped open, glowing silver. The moment their gazes met, a flood of emotions crashed into Ethan, fear, longing, sorrow, joy all at once. He staggered, gripping the edge of her bed. Ethan, you must leave, she gasped. It is too much. No, he said firmly, his voice shaking. I'm not leaving you. Her aura flared, and the lights in the room flickered. Ethan felt himself slipping, her emotions overwhelming his own. He could barely tell which feelings belonged to him anymore. Desperate, he reached for something human, something steady. He grabbed her hands, holding them tightly. Look at me, he said firmly. Focus on my voice. Just me. Forget everything else. Liara's glowing eyes locked onto his. The flood didn't stop, but it slowed. Ethan forced himself to stay calm, to breathe evenly. He began speaking, about Earth, about oceans and mountains, about small things like the smell of rain and the warmth of sunlight. Slowly, Liara's trembling eased. The glow in her eyes dimmed, and the pressure around them lessened. She sagged, forward, her forehead resting against his shoulder. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice raw. "I told you I would," Ethan said softly, holding her steady. For a long time they stayed like that, two very different beings, connected by something neither fully understood. The next morning, the storm had passed. Liara looked exhausted, but calmer than she had in weeks. She sat by the window watching the stars drift past. Ethan handed her a cup of warm tea from the station kitchen. "Thank you," she said quietly. Ethan sat beside her. "Feeling better?" She nodded slowly. "The peak has passed. I can breathe again." They sat in silence, sipping their tea. Then Liara spoke, her voice thoughtful. "You showed me something new. Humans endure storms not by avoiding them, but by standing in the middle and refusing to fall." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe we're just too stubborn to quit." Liara glanced at him, her silver eyes soft. "Either way, you kept me whole." Ethan felt warmth spread through his chest. He didn't know what their bond meant, yet, or how it would change them. But he knew one thing for certain. He and Liara were no longer just roommates. They were something more, something unplanned, something rare. And though the season had nearly broken them, it had also forged a connection stronger than either of them had expected. The storm had passed, but its shadow lingered. For several days after the peak of the Tayari season, Ethan noticed Liara moving more carefully, as though she was afraid of herself. She meditated longer, spoke less, and avoided direct eye contact. The glow in her silver eyes had dimmed, but he could still sense the weight she carried. Ethan tried not to push. He gave her space, but he also made sure she knew he was there, playing soft music, cooking meals, or telling quiet stories about Earth. Slowly the room regained its balance. Yet even as things seemed calmer, Ethan felt tension growing outside their quarters. Word had spread across the Valen orbital habitat. A human was living with a Tayari during their season and had not collapsed or fled. The whispers followed Ethan through the halls. Some humans called him reckless, some admired him, and some Tayari disapproved, claiming he had crossed a line not meant to be crossed. The true test came one morning, when a station officer arrived at their door. The door chimed, and Ethan rose to answer. A tall man in a dark uniform stood outside, his badge gleaming. His expression was polite but stern. "Ethan Hale?" "Yes," Ethan said, straightening. "I am Officer Draylen, Cultural Affairs Division. May I enter?" Ethan hesitated but stepped aside. Liara looked up from her meditation, her posture stiffening as the officer entered. "I will speak plainly," Draylen said, glancing between them. "The Tayari mating season has reached its peak. Regulations recommend separation during this time to avoid psychological harm. You should be relocated until the cycle ends." Liara's eyes darkened. "Relocated?" she repeated softly. Draylen nodded. "For the human safety. Emotional entanglement is dangerous. We cannot risk long-term damage." Ethan clenched his fists. "I've been here this whole time. I know the risks, but I'm fine. She needs me." Draylen's gaze sharpened. "That is precisely the concern. Attachment can cloud judgment." Liara rose to her feet, her aura flaring faintly. "Ethan has endured more than any expected. You would punish him for loyalty?" Draylen's voice remained calm. "This is not punishment, it is precaution. Humans are fragile, and you know this." Ethan stepped forward. "With respect, sir, I'm not leaving. I chose to be here, and I'm staying." The officer studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Very well. But understand this. You carry responsibility for what happens. If either of you loses control, the program itself may collapse." He turned and left without another word. The door closed, leaving silence behind. Liara sank onto her bed, her hands trembling slightly. "They fear us," she whispered. Ethan sat beside her. "No, They don't fear you. They fear what they don't understand. Her silver eyes flickered toward him. And you? Do you fear me? Ethan shook his head. No. I trust you. For the first time in days, Liara's expression softened, though her shoulders remained tense. But the officer's visit left its mark. From that day on, Ethan noticed more suspicion in the station halls. Other students avoided him, some whispering, as he passed. 2 human classmates asked bluntly if he had been changed by the Tayari bond. Even some Tayari gave him wary glances, as though he had crossed into territory forbidden even to them. One evening, as Ethan returned from the library, he found Liara standing by the window again. Her hands were pressed against the glass, and faint light pulsed from her palms. Liara? He asked. She didn't turn. They want to take you from me. Ethan stepped closer. No one's taking me anywhere. I told them I'm staying. Her voice wavered. But what if I break again? What if the bond overwhelms you? I saw it in your eyes that night. You almost lost yourself. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. And yet I didn't. I'm still here. Because we faced it together. Finally, she turned to him. You do not understand the danger. Our emotions are storms. To humans, they can feel like drowning. Ethan met her gaze steadily. Then I'll learn to swim. Her lips parted, as though to argue, but no words came. Instead, a soft, almost fragile smile appeared. The next test came 2 nights later. Liara was meditating when a surge of energy suddenly burst from her. The lights in their room flickered violently, and the air grew heavy. Ethan felt the rush, before she even moved, her emotions spiking like fire. She gasped, clutching her head. It's too strong. Ethan rushed to her side. The connection slammed into him, raw and overwhelming. Fear, longing, desperation. His knees buckled, and, for a moment, he couldn't tell if the feelings were hers or his. Liara, listen to me, he shouted, grabbing her hands. Her silver eyes flared, glowing like molten light. You should run, she gasped. I cannot hold it back. But Ethan gritted his teeth and held tighter. No, I'm not leaving you. Emotions clawed at him. Grief, hope, loneliness, joy, each one sharp enough to tear him apart. His vision blurred, but he forced himself to think of something steady, something human. He thought of his mother's voice, gentle but firm. He thought of the ocean waves he had once watched on Earth. He thought of his promise to Liara. I'm here, he whispered, his voice breaking. I won't let go. Slowly the storm eased. The light in Liara's eyes dimmed, and her trembling slowed. She collapsed forward, her forehead pressing against his chest. You endure, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Ethan stroked her hair gently. That's what humans do. We endure. The incident didn't go unnoticed. Station officials detected the power surge and came to investigate. When they found Ethan and Liara together, exhaustion written on both faces, the officers exchanged. Troubled looks, you see? One whispered. This cannot continue. But Ethan stepped forward, his voice stronger than he felt. We faced it. Together. And we're still standing. That's what this program is about. Understanding each other. If you separate us now, you'll prove that humans and Tayari can't trust one another. The officers hesitated, uncertain. Finally they left, but not without warning that any further incidents might force their hand. After they were gone, Liara sat quietly on her bed, staring at her hands. You risk yourself every moment you stay, she said softly. Ethan sat across, from her. So do you. That's what makes this fair. Her eyes lifted, glowing faintly. You are unlike any human I have known. Ethan smiled faintly. And you're unlike any alien I've ever met. Guess that makes us even. For the first time in weeks, Liara laughed softly. The sound was delicate, like chimes in the wind, but it filled the room with warmth. The cycle still pressed on, but the worst had passed. Ethan and Liara began to find a strange rhythm again. They cooked meals together, his human dishes and her glowing fruits. They listened to music, sometimes sharing silence instead of words. And every now and then their bond would flare unexpectedly, showing flashes of memory. One evening, Ethan saw through her eyes a crystal city bathed in silver light. In return, she saw through his eyes a human campfire, surrounded by friends, laughing under the night sky. "These are different worlds," Liara whispered, "yet both feel like home." Ethan nodded. "Maybe that's the point. Home isn't one place. It's where you feel you belong." She looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she whispered, "Perhaps I am beginning to understand humans." But even as their bond deepened, Ethan knew the tension outside their room had not faded. The program was under scrutiny. If another surge happened, if either of them lost control, the officials might not give them another chance. And yet, Ethan also knew one thing. He would not leave Liara. Not now. Not after everything they had endured, together. Because whatever the season had done, it had forged something stronger than fear, trust. And trust, Ethan believed, was humanity's greatest gift to the stars. The last days of the Tayari season passed slowly, like the fading echo of a song that refused to end. Ethan could feel the change in Liara before she spoke of it. The storm inside her, once sharp and heavy, was softening. Her silver eyes still glowed faintly, but the wildness had dimmed, replaced by a quiet steadiness. She spent more time walking with him through the station's gardens, more time listening, rather than hiding in silence. Yet there was a weight between them, an unspoken truth they both knew. When the season ended, their trial together would be judged, not only by themselves but by the entire habitat. One morning, as they sat in the common hall eating breakfast, Liara set down her cup of glowing nectar and looked at him with unusual seriousness. "The season is almost over," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, you seem calmer." Her lips curved slightly, but her voice carried a hint of sadness. "Calmer, yes. But endings are not always simple. When this cycle ends, they may separate us. The program officials will not forgive what they see as recklessness." Ethan stirred his food absent-mindedly. "Then we show them it wasn't recklessness. We show them it worked." Liara tilted her head, her silver hair catching the light. "And if they still refuse?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Then we'll find another way. Humans don't give up so easily." For the first time, Liara's laughter came freely, soft and musical. She shook her head gently. "Your stubbornness is both a gift and a danger." Later that day, an announcement summoned them to the Central Council chamber. Ethan's stomach tightened as he walked beside Liara, sensing the tension in the station itself. Humans and Tayari alike had gathered, whispering as the pair entered. At the center stood Officer Dreelan and several council members. Their expressions were unreadable. "Ethan Hale." "Liara of the Tayari," Dreelan began formally. "You have completed the season together. This alone is unprecedented. But questions remain. What has been gained? What has been risked? And can this program continue without harm to either side?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ethan felt Liara's eyes on him, steady but expectant. He realized they were waiting for him to speak. He took a deep breath. "I won't lie. It was hard. Harder than I imagined. The emotions, the bond, sometimes it felt like too much. But I didn't break. And Liara didn't break either. We faced it together, and we came out stronger." Council member frowned. "You were nearly overwhelmed, were you not? Our readings showed dangerous spikes in your neural patterns." "Yes," Ethan admitted, his voice firm. "But isn't that the point? To learn what humans and Tayari can survive together? If we only try the easy paths, we'll never grow." Liara stepped forward then, her voice calm but powerful. "He is correct. I feared losing control. I feared harming him. But Ethan endured not because he was forced, but because he chose. In that choice, I saw something no Tayari could ignore. Human strength does not come from power, but from loyalty." Her words carried through the hall like a clear bell. The murmurs stilled. Officer Dreelan's expression softened, though his voice remained cautious. "So you claim this bond has value?" "Yes," Liara said simply. Value beyond fear. The council deliberated, their voices low. Ethan and Liara waited in silence, side by side. At last, Draylen spoke again. The program will continue, he declared. But with greater study, your case will be recorded as the first successful endurance of a Tayari cycle by a human partner. It will be examined. The crowd buzzed with mixed reactions. Some humans looked doubtful, but many appeared curious, even impressed. The Tayari too seemed divided, yet among them, Ethan saw something he had not seen before. Respect. Liara inclined her head gracefully. We accept. Ethan exhaled slowly, relief flooding him. That evening, back in their quarters, the atmosphere was lighter than it had been in weeks. Liara moved quietly, but not with the same restraint as before. She seemed at ease, as though a weight had lifted. Ethan leaned against the window, watching the stars drift by. So, does this mean it's over? The season? Liara approached, standing beside him. Yes, the storm has passed. What remains is only me. Ethan glanced at her. And that's enough. For a long moment they stood in silence, watching the endless stars. Then Liara spoke again, her voice quieter. Do you regret staying? Ethan smiled softly. Not for a second. Her silver eyes glowed faintly as she studied him. Then perhaps the unexpected was not only mine to carry. The following days were strangely peaceful. Without the weight of the season pressing on them, Ethan and Liara settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. They studied together, shared meals, and explored more of the habitat. Other students began to approach them, not just out of curiosity but with genuine questions. One human asked Ethan, what was it like, really, being linked to her emotions? Ethan thought for a moment before answering. Like standing in a storm. But if you plant your feet and don't run, you realize the storm isn't just danger, it's beauty too. Liara, when asked similar questions by her people, simply said, humans endure. That is their gift. Their words spread further than they expected. One evening, Liara brought Ethan to the habitat's observation dome. The space was vast, filled with glass panels that revealed the galaxy in all its brilliance. The two stood together in the quiet, the stars stretching endlessly above them. Liara's voice was soft when she finally spoke. On my world, we have a saying. When the storm ends, the sky remembers. It means that what survives the storm carries its mark forever. Ethan looked at her thoughtful. Then I guess we're both marked now. She turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the stars. Yes, and perhaps that is not a burden, but a gift. The weeks that followed confirmed it. Ethan noticed that humans and Tayari spoke more openly now, curious about one another in ways they hadn't been before. The fear hadn't vanished, but it had lessened, and more importantly, respect had taken root. For Ethan, that was victory enough. But in the quiet of their shared room, he also knew something more personal had grown, a bond that went beyond survival, beyond study. A bond forged in trust, tested by storms, and strengthened by choice. One night as he drifted toward sleep, Liara's voice reached him softly. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you. For not leaving. He smiled in the dark. I told you. I'm not going anywhere. The storm had ended. The season had passed. But the story of a human and his alien roommate, two beings from different worlds who found trust in the middle of chaos, was only beginning. Because sometimes, humanity's greatest power wasn't technology or strength or even intelligence. It was the simple choice to stay.